Hi everyone, my name is Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and it is time to do the mid-year freakout tag. I love doing this tag every year. It's a fun one to kind of like dive in, look at my reads, answer the questions, and kind of see how the first part of the year has gone. As of filming this video, I've read a lot of books this year. I was going to slow down this year, but one thing I did do was read a lot of manga this year because I did a 30 and 30 and I wanted to dive into manga more. So that definitely has upped my numbers for how many books I have read. As of filming this video, I have read 127 books this year. That's a lot more than I originally planned, and I have slowed down, as I've said, but I did read a lot of manga, so my numbers are a little bit all over. But let's dive into the questions and see what my answers are. I actually haven't looked at these questions until like right now, and I did this last year, but I don't really remember them. So I'm gonna just kind of answer on the fly. And I think those first instinctual answers are definitely going to really show what the answers really are. And I'm just gonna lead with my heart on that one. And the first question is the best book I've read so far this year. And that was easy. I know what my best book of the year was, and that is God Killer by Hannah Kaner. If you've been around at all this year, you know I loved this book. I adored this book. I love the representation in this book. There's so much representation. We have LGBTQ plus representation. We have a main character with a prosthesis. We have hearing aids and also deaf representation. We have sign language in this book. There's so much of representation in these books. We also have a character with PTSD. Like, there's a lot. There's great representation. There's also amazing commentary on so many things. I don't know how Hannah Kaner put so much into these books, and it is by far my favorite book of the year. I have read Sunbringer, and I also gave that 5 stars. This series is going to be one of my favorites, and one that I talk about for a very long time. The best sequel I've read all year, I just read very, very recently, and that is A Prayer for the Crowned Shy by Becky Chambers. I read A Psalm for the Wild-Built earlier this year, adored it, 5 stars, and I gave this one 5 stars as well, and I actually think I liked it more than the original because this one is really Moss Cap's book, and I just adore Moss Cap. I also adore Dex, but Moss Cap has a very special place in my heart. In the first book, we follow Dex, who is a tea monk, and they decide to go into the woods and kind of discover what they're missing in their life. In the woods, they stumble upon Moss Cap. Moss Cap is a robot, and Moss Cap is actually making their way into the city to find out what humans need. In the first book, we follow Dex and Moss Cap's adventure in the woods, and in this book, we follow Moss Cap and Dex's adventure in the city. This one, by the end, I was crying. Again, probably going to be on my best books of the year because I would be surprised if it isn't. It's short, it's a quick read, so wholesome. It's just so touching and perfection in my eyes. For a new release I haven't read yet but want to, I definitely need to get to A Fate Inked in Blood. I am so behind on this popular book, mostly because I wasn't sure if I would like it. But the more I hear about it and the more of people who know about this book and know what I like have told me I will like it, the more this has shot to the top of my TBR. It's mythological, which I do really, really enjoy. I've heard it's quite political, and also it does have a bit of a fanro component, but that is secondary to the fantasy, which is the reason I need to get to this book, and I would really like to read it before the end of the year. My most anticipated release for the second half of this year has to be Daydream by Hannah Grace. If the pretty editions of Icebreaker and Wildfire behind me don't tell you why that would be the case, it's because I adore this series. Icebreaker is my favorite so far in the series, but I think Daydream is going to give it a run for its money because it follows Henry, and Henry has my whole heart. This book comes out in August, and I cannot wait to get it in my clutches, and I'm going to be reading it very soon, basically as soon as it arrives, because I need to read this. It's already living rent-free in my head, and I haven't even read the book yet. My biggest disappointment of the year had to be Sanctuary of the Shadow. I bought this beautiful, beautiful book and I wanted to love it, and I even held on to it long after I read it and didn't love it just because it was so beautiful. I only very recently unhauled it. I wanted to love this book so much, and unfortunately the world building just left it so lacking for me that I just could not love this book. There was also not enough circus content for it to be like marketed as a magical circus. It was just such a big disappointment, and that made me so sad because I wanted to display it on my shelves because it was just so gorgeous, but it just didn't hit for me. My biggest surprise of the year has to be Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadband. I did not love Serpent in the Wings of Night. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Gave it 3.5 stars. Everyone told me to try this novella. It was a fairy tale retelling. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I did. I adored it. Gave it 5 stars. It is up there for Beauty and the Beast retellings for me, and it is the reason I'm continuing on with this series. This was really surprising to me because after not loving the first book, I did not have high expectations going into this one, and it exceeded any expectations I could have had. And I'm so glad that these characters, because I have asked around, do show up in the second book, because I needed to know that, because I love these characters. Even if it's just a small bit, I need to see them in the next book. Favorite new to me author this year, it's gonna be a hard one to choose between 3. Becky Chambers, who wrote Song for the Wild Built, Hannah Grace, who wrote the Icebreaker series, and also Hannah Kaner, who wrote the God Killer series. I think I'm gonna have to give it to Hannah Kaner just because every time I read a Hannah Kaner book, I am just shocked at the actual writing skills that Hannah Kaner has. It really is quite amazing to me. So I'm going to give this to Hannah Kaner, but all 3 of these authors are new to me this year, and all of them will have books on my best books of the year, unless something very radically changes, which I cannot foresee. So I have to give props to all 3 of them. Newest fictional crush goes back to a little bit to my anticipated releases of the year. My newest fictional crush is Henry. I just recently annotated Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and the 3rd most used color tab that I used was Henry, and it's not even Henry's book. He is not the male protagonist in this book. Nathan is. So definitely my new fictional crush, but how much will I be crushing on Henry, this very fictional character, once I read his actual book? Someone may need to check in on me and make sure I'm okay. Newest favorite character. That is a character that is in God Killer and Sunbringer, and that is Sketty. Sketty has such a place in my heart. Sketty is the god of white lies. And he is this tiny little god attached to our main character, Inara. And somehow they are attached. And in the first book, that is the main plot of the first book, is to separate Sketty from Inara. Gods are illegal, and it's not good for Inara to be attached to one. Sketty is this little animal. He can kind of change sizes if people pay attention to him. There's a lot of commentary in God Killer about how the gods actually get bigger by people paying attention to them, and how giving attention to things makes them grow in importance in your life. I can't talk enough about God Killer, but Sketty, all the love for Sketty. For a book that made me cry, I cry at a lot of books, and I didn't want to talk about the same books that I've already talked about because a lot of them did make me cry. But another one that I haven't talked about yet, which was a beautiful close to a trilogy that I've read recently, is The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. I know a lot of people didn't like this book. I know, but I loved it. This book really worked for me, but the last bit of this book was just devastation. It was just absolute devastation. I cried so much through this book. Even the author's note, I read the author's note and I bawled. Like, I think I cried more during the author's note than I did during the actual book, but I cried during the book too. This book got me, and I really just want to go back and reread this series at some point because I think I'll appreciate some of the things happening in the early books now that I've read the last one. So for a book that made me happy, we have to go with the 3rd book in the Lovelight Farm series, which is Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. This is a baking romance. Instantly, it's something I'm going to like. Love a baking romance. We follow Layla and Caleb. Layla has given up on dating. She's had enough duds. She's done. And Caleb and her decide to basically fake date. Not to like fool anyone, but to like practice dating. There's a few reasons for this. I won't go too in depth about the reasoning because it's been a while since I've read this book. These are almost sunshine, if that's a trope. Layla is so bubbly, but she, has moments where things don't necessarily go the way she wants them to. And Caleb is always there to pick up the pieces. He is the golden retriever that you want in a book boyfriend. He's fabulous. He's always there for her. He's always there to give her motivation and pick her up and just love on her. This book just made me smile the whole time. It just made me so happy. And instantly when I thought, what book made me happy? This is the one that came to mind. The most beautiful book I bought this year so far is definitely 5 Broken Blades. This book is beautiful. The sprayed edges are lovely. Under the Dust Jacket, also lovely. It's just such a beautiful book. So this is definitely my most beautiful book so far. I have ordered a very beautiful copy of Icebreaker. So that is coming as well. So I will also have that at some point, but it's not here yet. It's only pre-ordered. So I will count this as my most beautiful book so far this year. Have not read it. Don't know if it's good, but I do own it. Now for this last question, it's what books do you still need to get to by the end of the year? and that's probably a lot of books. I have my 24 and 24, I have my buzzword challenge, I have my 12 books recommended by 12 friends, and to be honest, I remember very little that is on those. I should probably do like a reaction video reacting to see if I've even read any of those. I would be concerned at how well that's going. Maybe it's going better than I thought, but I kind of think it's probably not. Fingers crossed that it is, but it probably isn't, and I really should probably relook at what I put on those lists and like refamiliarize myself. But we're not going to do that today. But those are the books that I technically should be reading, are the ones that I plan to read at the beginning of the year. But that's the end of my mid-year freakout tag. Let me know some of the answers to these questions down in the comment box down below. I really like to know what your best and worst and all the answers in between are this year. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.